Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the 10 channel. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Please subscribe. Let's just help monetize this channel. Share this channel. Click on the notification button. Share, 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 share. Now, this is the second part of the series of the video we're doing on some of the wrong beliefs that Africans and people of African descent have about each other. And this is the second part. And we're going to talk about five more beliefs that we have as Africans in diaspora about each other, which is holding us back. These are the major things that are keeping us in shackles. These are the things that are holding us back. These are the things that are keeping us down because no race can keep us down any longer. But then the legacy of our past is reflected in these things. As I said in the first video, when you have not watched it, check out the first video. Um, because we have been abused for so long, we have developed certain habits, certain tendencies. We have picked up certain behaviors which are abnormal, typical of any abused child, typical of any abused group. You pick up certain habits to cope, to blend in, to please the masters, to retaliate, to avenge, and all of these things have bear these wrong beliefs. We've dealt with the first five, and we are dealing with the second in this broadcast. Actually, please check out all the series on the black race. As I've said in my other videos, when you see me in this black smoke, I'm celebrating my blackness. I am saying black is beautiful. I want us to understand that this is not for funeral. This is not for a bad situation. It is completely anti-African to designate black as being for a bad situation. No, this is for a great situation, and this is to celebrate my blackness. So, I'm Elder. You can also call me a philosopher, and let's go. Now, the first thing we're talking about today is very simple. Many Africans believe, many people of African descent believe that the people of other races, no matter even what they are worshiping, are more God fearing. That we tend to be less committed to God. That is also another erroneous view because the African has been known to be a man or woman of worship. Even though, as if you look at the other videos I've done, as to check out the video, is Christianity a white man's religion? It explains some of these things. Our concept of God had to do with you know, several gods. At the point in time in Egypt was a kind of monotheist system, but then it's a polytheist system mostly when the Europeans came, where we believe in one God, creator of the earth and of the heavens, and yet we have many ways to approach him, you know. And when um, the missionaries came, when the missionaries came, they made us aware that that was not the right way to worship God, but that God was one and that He's chosen one way to worship Him. Now, because the people that brought the gospel to us again, because if you have watched the video I mentioned, you realize that we had the gospel early. In fact, we had the gospel right from the very beginning. But then the people who introduced the gospel to us, especially those of us in the West Africans and the Eastern Africans and the rest, because there was some portion of even Central Africa that had also been reintroduced the gospel far earlier. So when the gospel was reintroduced to us, what we were made to understand is that we were enemies. We never knew God. We have had no encounter with God, and that the people that are showing us God are European masters. If that's what people are referring to when they said there's a white man religion, then maybe that is it. But that is not really what it means. What it means is that our knowledge of God now especially those of us in the West Africa and Central and Eastern Africa, our knowledge of God as God who sent his son to come and die for us were mostly through white missionaries. Because of that, we have associated fearing God with whites, Caucasians. So many people, when they're doing anything with a white person, they assume honesty, they assume the person will be fair because they assume the person, because of the history of missionaries sacrificing their life, you know, giving up everything to come and help us, to come and educate us, to come and teach us. That legacy continues in the minds of many Africans. I know for those in the Americas, such a thing does not exist because um, they remember the brutalities all the way even to the 60s, even to now. Um, those in Britain and the rest, well, I think they must. So everybody has a different story, but those of us in Africa, especially, we still remember the whites with fond memory because many of them were missionaries that wanted to introduce us to God. And hence, the thinking that all whites are God fearing. No, in fact, for now, it's as clear as they were the ones behind Taoism, the very thing that has caused many people to forsake God. In fact, you go to many places in Europe and Americas, and they don't want to have anything to do with God. In fact, it is mostly the Caucasians. So for for whites, fearing God more than blacks, that is a no-no. In fact, for that one, when it comes to Africa, the Africans will tell you that Africans fear God more than whites, actually. And it's clearly demonstrated in our worship and our ceremonies. But then there's a school of thought that we are more into ceremonies, and somehow the white has ingrained in them a certain pure fear of God. It does not exist, really. They do things according to their interest, and they are still as abusive and as selfish as ever. The same way as our people too are. I mean, it's a human thing, not a color thing. So the whites are no more God fearing than us. Please. Secondly, in this one, if we this belief is shattered, it will help us a lot. Secondly, um, every white is not better than every black. In other words, there are many people who believe. In fact, we have proverbs like um, it is when you want to talk too much that you try to prove that a white man has many clothing. That cannot be further from the truth. Why? Because over the year we're receiving what we call second-hand clothing from them, and we didn't know what the whole concept about of it was about. So the notion was that every white person is worthy, and every worthier than a black person. That one too. For those who know anything now, know it's not the case. They are billionaires, they are millionaires who are blacks, and there are many, 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 many people who are far, 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 many, many Africans who are far, far, far richer than many, many, many whites. In fact, the average white um, has more debt than equity. The average white is literally in debt. So very, very few of them are really, really wealthy and really, really rich. Why is this important? Because many times when we are dealing with the white in any transaction, because we have the notion that they don't really need what we are transacting with, we tend to give it to them for keeps, for cheap. And the Bible is clear on this. There's only a foolish person that tries to give to a rich man gifts, because you only come to poverty. You can never out, you can never give, to impress him. And that is the situation we find many African countries do deals with whites, and because of the notion that they are rich and we are the one who are poor, they are helping us, we tend to defer to them and go away with sometimes as little as 5% interest in 100% deal. Can you imagine? What kind of fool does that? But because we have this behind our mind, we do that. If we only clear this belief from our mind, because we know it's true. We know it's true. Many of us live with them, and we know it's true that very few of them are very rich. Or somebody will ask you, but what about the Forbes list of, sometimes I wonder, I mean, are you aware that in the population of the United States, for instance, Um, Even African Americans are even from 25% of the population. So this 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 notion that and so Handy, and as I was saying in my other videos, the blacks population in the world are not many. We are very few, and there are many shades of whites along the way in between. There are just a few of the people. So if you have a in a pool, and then there are more what do you call it? All of only Indians alone are more than us. Only Chinese are more than us as what do you call it, Africans. So this idea that because Forbes says that 10 out of 10 are whites, and therefore disproportionately because of the balance of power and years of accumulation, they are richer, and yet they are not richer. And they do polls where they say the average in American family, the average one, Caucasian is far richer than the average what they call it. That is the average. Now they're talking about the middle class and the rest, but not every white is richer than every black. In fact, that one we all know it's not the case. And once we know it's not the case, anytime we have a dealings with them, we should deal with it boot for boot. We should go into the deal as a win-win situation. We should go in not as the underdogs, but as equal partners. And this notion we should spread even to the Chinese, to the Indians, and the rest. If we don't stop this notion of this person is a white, and I'm black, and we have these things at our the back of our minds, we are never going to really come out of this situation. And as I said, it's not only an African and Indian situation, it's not an African and Chinese situation. It's purely a black and white situation. All shades of whites, that is. So let's get this notion out of people's mind, and we will really, really, really develop as a people. Can you imagine you are buying something from someone, you are saying this thing is inferior, and they tell no, 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 this one is a white man's quality. It's only when you are bringing it to Africa that's inferior. Why should you believe something like that about yourself? Why should you agree that you deserve the worst thing? It's all because we think collectively and individually they are all better than us. Now, the eighth thing that every black should disabuse is our mind of the eighth thing that a wrong belief that we should dispel is that um, blacks are incapable of good leadership compared to whites. This one is it's like almost a universal truth in the minds of many enslaved, mentally enslaved blacks. It's like everywhere you go, whenever there's need for leadership, the first person that not even the whites but the blacks will recommend is a white. Somehow we've come to believe that because of centuries of leadership. And what I don't understand is during the slave trade we didn't enjoy anything. So what kind of leadership did we have as slaves that made us feel it was a great leadership? What kind of leadership indeed did we have as colonialists? They left our nations third world, poor, underdeveloped after centuries of ruling it. So what is this great leadership we keep talking about? All that we believe that the kind of atrocities they wanted to commit, their firm grip on power is what makes them great leaders. That is not great leadership. Now they themselves call such kinds of government, those kinds of government as dictatorships, as despots, as despotic leadership. And that's how they describe them. So how can we claim that the despotic leaderships that these people demonstrated to us is a kind of leadership we want? You may think I'm crazy. I've heard a very, very senior man make a remark like that the way he thinks Nigeria is going, it needs to be recolonized. I mean, and it's amazing the way people romanticize such an unfortunate part of our life. What state did they leave Nigeria in? Was Nigeria a developed nation when they left it? So why do you want to go back to that situation? That situation when only where they lived and what they liked was developed and the rest was left undeveloped. I have not, especially as far as Africa is concerned, I have not experienced any great leadership of any color here that is better than the leadership we've had. In fact, if anything, the leadership we've had are a product. In fact, they are a carbon copy of the leadership that the Europeans and the rest left us. They copied them word for word. They are their product, they are their creation. And so they are not better leaders. Oh, somebody will say, but they build great nations and oh dear. Our only problem, and it is not only from Africa, all over the world. The only the only thing that enlightened them ahead of us in Europe was they found Christ, and by the reason of that, it emancipated their minds, and then over time, they went ahead of the rest of the world. That was the only thing. So when we met them, they were more advanced than us this time, and by reason of that, they were more powerful. That's all. It has nothing to do with. There were many uncalled for things done by their leadership, and they did it all the way to the 1800s. I mean, 1900 was still misbehaving all over the place. Okay, right now as nations, they are more organized than us, but for them to be this rich and yet have many of their people living hand to mouth, and many of their people in the stress in which they are in, that is not leadership. That is not great leadership at all. Leadership cannot be reduced only to GDP growth. Leadership cannot be reduced. If that was the case, then nobody should have a problem with China because they are producing resource, taking hundreds of millions of people out of poverty, growing at 10%, 11%. No developed nations growing at that rate. And yet we have a problem with China. Why? Because they are human rights abuses. The same way that there are discriminations and others against people of African descent in these developed nations. So they are not better leaders. And the earlier we demanded higher leadership from our people, the better. Because once we have this notion, it means that the people leading us will just, you know, accept the fact that they are mediocre leaders and continue to be mediocre. That could not be further from the truth. Now, so the eighth belief we need to kick out of our minds is that um yes, that's what we said that the Africans are incapable of great leadership like the whites. That we have just dispelled that notion is false. To get it out of our minds. Nine, that Africans do not like reading. This is one of the things that people even have the misfortune of cracking jokes about it. If you want to hide something from, I think the man who said that thing was drunk actually. If you want to hide anything from Africa, hide in the book. You see, the man who said it, I believe, was drunk because, or maybe he was high or something. Books are just things we put in knowledge. So the various civilizations had various ways of putting in knowledge. In some are Dinka symbol, in some hieroglyphic, in some common, some cuneiforms. So to reduce all store of knowledge to a book and say that because you didn't meet Africans have reading a book, therefore you don't like to read is the most in fact it's the most simplistic of argument. And unfortunately many Africans, including educated people, hold this notion. One of the most prolific writers of all time, in this day and age, a man who, before he turned 50, had already written over 300 books. It's an African. Sometimes they talk about somebody writing thousands of years ago and the rest, but these are books which are still there. You can verify. You know, these are not pamphlets. These are books. Ever since I was born, I have been reading, and I know many others. I don't know. There's no genetic predisposition of any African to lack of reading. It doesn't exist. But when you are in an era where you go to Timbuktu, as far back as the 14th century, 13th century, there were books. In fact, they have over 100,000 books, and this is an African, you know, Timbuktu, Songhai Empire, Mali Empire. All of these now they've written all of these books, and they are there. They are now being translated into digital format so people can have access to. The fact that you encounter a situation does not mean you should generalize it. This prejudicial, you know, things that people used to do. They have a simple situation. They generalize it, and you have Africans repeating it. Such derogatory remark. Where did this man have a book around Africans that they didn't read? When the person is illiterate, how can he read a book? If the person is an illiterate, how can he read a book? If the person has not lived around the books, how will the person read books? Now that we are in an era of reading, are we not reading our WhatsApps? Are we not reading all of these articles? Are we not reading, all of those messages being sent to us? I mean, where at all has any scientific thing been done that has said that we don't like reading? Reading is just looking for information, and it's just a form of keeping that information and retrieving that information. So why has it become an issue to use to ensure the intelligence of people of African descent and of Africans? So this belief that Africans have of themselves is not true because we know we read, you know, especially those in the time past when all the books that were produced were about Europe and about Europeans. Anybody who didn't like that kind of um, book will not read. It has nothing to do with genetic makeup. Now that we are writing books, there's several Christian books being written by our ministers today, and they are being bought and read all over. I remember when I was growing up in secondary school, I could read almost a 200-page book in 2 hours. I mean, and nobody told me to read because I grew up around books. It's a habit you pick. And now that we have books all around, Africans are reading more than ever. I mean, it's amazing. Some questions you can ask an African about United States, he can tell you. You ask some average person, in the United States about Africa, the person can say. So who is doing the reading? Or is it when you read only about your country that means you like reading? We read everything. Africans, we read everything about anything. There are people who know things even about what is happening in a county. So that is number nine and it's false. We read. Tell everybody that we love reading. It's not true we don't like reading. Now we have the last one. Uh that blacks are inherently evil people who pull others down. Wow. Another very prevalent myth about blacks is that we love to pull people down. And what is so annoying that you have one African rising up, and when somebody criticizes him, that person who has been propped up, supported, and pushed up by other Africans, when somebody criticizes him, that person will turn around and claim that Africans in general, Ghanaians in general, Nigerians in general, like to put people down. I don't know the same person that puts you up, or that you believe you pull yourself up. But when it comes to coming down after that one, they will bring you down. Look, in every society, once you are given, you are entrusted with fame, with fortune, there will be certain responsibilities that will be demanded of you. You'll be expected to be honest. You'll be expected to be accountable. You'll be expected to be responsible and generous. And once you fail to do these things, society will come after you. And they don't do that only in Africa. They don't do that only in the neighborhood of African Americans or those in the West Indies or Caribbeans. They do that in everywhere. And when people demand that you are accountable, do not turn around and claim that yes, once again, your fellows are pulling down because they are the very people that pulled you up. No other race would. They are the very people that pulled you up, supported you, propped you up, encourage you. I wish you admit that one too. So that is part two of wrong beliefs that Africans and people of African descent think about each other, or have about each other. The wrong beliefs that we have about each other. These are the ones pulling us back. Let's get rid of these beliefs about each other. They are false. They are not true. They are the ones that are really keeping us in mental slavery, not going to church. It is these beliefs that are keeping us bound, not believing in the Bible. It is these beliefs that are keeping us, you know, backward. It is not by quoting scripture. It is these beliefs. So let's get rid of these beliefs, and we will indeed flourish. Once upon a time, the Chinese and China was called the sick man of Europe. Now everybody, when they sneeze, everybody's catching a cold. It can be done. We only need to come together and think the best of each other. Have the right beliefs for each other, the best belief for each other. And once that is there, nothing will hold us back. Please, for more videos like this, click subscribe, notification, click the notification. Yeah, yeah. I want to click it so that when more videos are made, you will get it. I mean, spread the word. Let's increase subscription and let's help monetize the channel so that um I can do more things to make it better. We need to educate ourselves, and this is a time for it. And if anything, let's prove to our detractors that we support each other. We don't bully each other down. We support each other, and that we are united. God bless you for being a black star. Bless you. Bless you. Be blessed.